Welcome to the Provo Municipal Council Airport Board Joint Meeting. It's 11:10 on Tuesday, July 19th, 2016. We're gathered in room 310, the City Center Conference Room at 351 West Center in Provo, Utah. And we will begin with roll call. First of all, I should just welcome the board. We're excited to meet with you today. And a year ago, I think it was, we made this decision to start meeting with our board so we know you a little bit better and we have a working relationship and we're able to glean information from you and so we appreciate you being here and taking the time to meet with us. So we'll begin with a roll call of Mr. Sewell. We'll start with that.
Dave Sewell, Dave Mack, Gary Winterton,
Louise Jorgensen,
Brian Harvick, Steve Gleason, Bill Nebraska,
Lon Horton,
Chris Whitehead,
Cliff Strachan, Mark Hathaway, Wayne Parker.
Dave Hardy.
Thank you. And Kim Santiago. We are missing Mr. Van Buren and George, Mr. Stewart. So I guess they'll be joining us soon. We'll excuse them for now. And Mr. Mayor's
He's on his way.
is on his way as well. Okay, thank you. We'll begin with an opening prayer. Mr. Kemp, if you don't mind offering that. Thank you.
Our dear Heavenly Father, we thanks for the opportunity of being together, discussing the affairs of Provo and the future of our airport, and important issues. Pray for your guidance and things that decide that we might choose wisely and do it in the best interest of the citizens of Provo and that's in Jesus Christ.
So the first item of business is the airport master plan. This is Mr. Gleason, was this from your board, this item for discussion?
Kind of.
Okay. I'm not sure who's presenting, I guess. So.
Me.
Okay. Thank you.
Our board's used to that. They're used to hearing me talk a lot and then trying to set me straight on the things that I don't understand. So, this is our master plan. It's pretty thick. We did this in 2001. This was actually the first project I worked on as the airport manager. It's fairly comprehensive. It has a lot of big plans of things that might happen by 2020. I'm going to go through and show you some of the presentation that we have accomplished off of this master plan. Then we're going to talk about some things that haven't happened yet, the reasons those things haven't happened, and why we are starting a new master plan right now, actually. So, if you don't mind, and I already mentioned I'm not sure what the format of these usually are, but Dave and Greg thought it helpful if I just did a quick presentation. A lot of this information is stuff that you've seen before, particularly our airport board has seen it before, so I'm going to go through this really quickly so that we can get to a more discussion phase. I don't know where to point this.
you may need to turn it on. There's a thing on the side.
On the side. Excuse me. Got it. I just needed revision. Still not functioning. There we go. Okay. So this is our master plan. A couple of things to mention about the master plan as it sits now. Everything that has red lines through it is something that is planned, not something that was constructed at the time we did the master plan in 2000. Everything that is green is already there or was already there in 2000. Everything that is gray was scheduled to be demolished at some point during the 20 years of the master plan. Really struggling with this. I'll find a direction. So just a little closer look at the same thing. As far as the airport goes, these are all things that were not there in 2001 that were master planned to be there eventually. This is really hard. Okay, so in red, you'll see what we've accomplished off the master plan. Are you gonna help me figure out how to work that?
I'm gonna plug it in. That usually
That's
helps.
my error, sorry.
But it was still clicking. Or were you doing that?
I was doing it.
He was doing it. I thought that I had.
Now it should work.
Now it's gonna work?
I hope so.
It's great to have tech-savvy people around. All right, so what is in red here are things that were master planned in the red stripes that we have already constructed. So this is part of the progress that we've made on the terminal layout plan. Improvements are shown in red. As far as on the GA side, how we've gone is shown in purple. This is the new airport operations building that has been built, and then we built a row of T-hangars right here because the master plan showed all of this area to be T-hangars. That's one of the reasons we're doing another master plan right now, is that we found that the market for T-hangars has softened dramatically, but the market for box hangars, larger corporate hangars, that is growing. So at this point, our master plan needs to reflect that, because I can't use this ground to start building what is actually needed until the master plan reflects that. The FAA would not support that idea. So I think we're just going to keep going here. As far as FBO improvements, when I got to the airport, we had 3 FBOs on the airfield. That's a lot of FBOs for the amount of traffic that we do. And they would all go to the center ramp. We had 3 FBOs standing on the center ramp, every one with their own flag guy, trying to get somebody to follow in. It was like I don't even know how to describe it. It was like being on a beach in Mexico where everybody comes up trying to sell you something. Over time, Millionaire at the time bought out the other 2 FBOs. I tried as hard as I could not to let them buy out our last FBO. But in the end, it was the FBO owner, the other FBO owner, who begged, let them buy me, I'm losing money. Yeah.
What is an FBO?
Oh, sorry. If I start talking like that, let me know, because a lot of people will understand what I'm saying. FBO stands for Fixed Base Operator. Chris Whitehead manages TAC Air, which is our fixed base operator right now. What they do is fuel aircraft, provide maintenance in the aircraft. In Title 17, we have a list of things that FBOs have to do to become an FBO, Title 17 of City Code, and it goes through what you need to do to be an FBO. So you have to provide fuel, have a pilot's lounge, telephone, bathroom. You have to provide mechanical services, those kinds of things. So we had 3, slowly through purchasing, Millionaire consolidated that to 1. And right now that's TAC Air is our 1 FBO. But as you can see, we've made some progress. These 2 buildings are not built. They were planned at one time, but those plans can change. However, there were 2 buildings there that were scheduled to be demolished, and those have both been demolished. So that's part of the progress that we've made on the master plan. This large hangar right here is where Duncan currently resides. So like I said, I'll go through some of this quickly. Okay, as far as long-range planning, this is the airport from a long ways away. You can see that when we did the master plan, we created what we call the airport protection zone, which is around the airport. That was to prevent, and frankly, it was one of the smartest things that we did. One of the best things that the council did was to vote for that. What that zone says is we cannot put higher density of housing in that area than currently is there. It doesn't restrict any other zoning. It doesn't restrict current zoning. It only restricts higher density. So if somebody came in and wanted to turn a large parcel into quarter-acre lots or fifth-acre lots, they couldn't do that. We did that to avoid the situation they have in Ogden, where they have a runway right off the end of a different city, Roy, and Roy has built massive high-density housing right off the end of that runway, and all that does is contribute to a lot of complaints, a lot of anger from citizens about the airport, and it creates contention, and So we created this protection zone. Gary,
How much of that protection zone does the city own?
how much do we own? Right now, we own this piece right here, which is currently where Duncan Aviation's facility will be. We also own, let me get oriented here. We also own 3 houses along here. What we told everyone when we did this master plan, because it was quite contentious with the West Side residents, and what we promised at that point was I would never come out and ask them to sell the land. But if they wanted to sell, we were willing to be buyers. We were willing to look at buying that property. So we haven't gone out and actively pursued property in the airport protection zone at all. If we find out something is for sale, we definitely want to be a player in that for a lot of different reasons. For example, when we purchased this piece of ground right here, we did so before we had Duncan even in mind for that particular piece of property. We bought it because it was airport adjacent. It made sense to do it. It was a big investment by the city. I think we spent a couple $1 million on that, which is a lot of money. But what we need to remember is that that money can always be reimbursed by the FAA because it's a priority to purchase land around an airport. So what we've done with the houses we've purchased, which we are now generating revenue off of as rentals, and what we've done with land like this land, is we use that as our grant match. Most of you probably haven't noticed that I don't come to you every year and ask for $100,000 for a grant match. Because we right now get $1 million a year from the FAA. That's our entitlement funds. We're guaranteed to get $1 million a year from the FAA. That means that our grant match on that is 10%. We would owe $100,000 a year in order to get that $1 million. We've never come to you and asked for that. The reason is we just carve out a $100,000 parcel of that land, draw it into the airport, and that's our grant match. So purchasing land gives us something tangible forever and keeps us from having to come up with $100,000 to give the FAA every year. In fact, we're going to, the airport board and I will break our arm patting ourselves on the back, but because we've done it this way, all other airports in the state are starting to see the light. I've preached this doctrine. I'm hoping the FAA doesn't change the policy at some point, because buying land and using it as match is far superior to giving match. For example, this year we did a $700,000 runway rehabilitation, or a $7 million runway rehabilitation. That meant our grant match was $700,000. We would have had to come to you and we would have had to find $700,000. And that would have been money we just gave to this project. Instead, we gave $700,000 worth of property drawn into the airport. You never saw it gone, and we have a tangible asset. So that's why we buy property. Yeah.
This is kind of back on the Duncan Aviation. I had a question sort of brewing in my mind. There's 10 acres that we're holding for them for future expansion. I'm assuming that's contiguous to the property they have right now, but where about is that 10 acres that we're holding for future expansion?
We've got a better map probably that we can show when we get to the Duncan Aviation part. He's got the map drawn out. I'll hand that around. But just in general, so you know, it's this piece right over here. They're going to start building at this end and then move this direction. Okay? Okay, so the way the airport is laid out is we drew it into 3 separate zones on the airport. These are by airport policy only. The first is our terminal area. A lot of people have wanted to build out there. We have restricted that area. We don't allow anybody to even consider building out there because eventually we want to build our terminal there. The next area is what we refer to as our corporate hangar and commercial area. That's where large hangars, like when Novell built, it's now owned by the Gallons. Vivint has a hangar down there. That's our corporate row at this particular time. Right now we just have the one taxi lane that is well right there, and we've filled that up. So we have master planned a second corporate row to go right here, which we're hoping to build soon, but we're still kind of working through how that might all work out. So that's our corporate area. It has different building standards than different parts of the airport. Down here is our GA side. That's general aviation corrugated steel buildings. Typical thing you would think of when you think of a hangar. That's where your single engine jet and your private owners are down there, your single engine aircraft. Master plans, not in our master plan, but just looking at land use. We've got that piece of property that looks like it would be good for future GA development. Again, a lot of that right now is privately owned, and we would not go out looking to buy that land. If someone wanted to sell it, I think we would be crazy not to be buyers, but we don't go out trying to buy that. Yeah.
Do we have a first right of refusal clause with those homeowners around the area, or just an agreement?
We don't, and that's been a bit of a problem because those property values start to rise commercially, but the appraisals don't. Right now, because everything is zoned agricultural, for example, this corner piece right here that goes all the way down there, it's a big piece, came up for sale. We wanted to buy it, so we hired someone to do an appraisal. The appraisal came in somewhere around $500,000. They were asking $1.2 million for that piece. Legally, we can't go more than 10% above appraised value, so that was our offer. But unfortunately, Kenny Sang, who also beat us out of the bid for this particular piece of property right here, was willing to pay a lot more than we legally could, than that the FAA would even support us in doing. So right now the property values are going up substantially. So when property comes available that we can buy, we need to buy it. And we need to buy it as quickly as we can. But again, we made a promise that we're not going to condemn and we're not going to go out and go after people. Yeah.
I think I understand what you're saying, but it seems strange to me. You could almost say that an appraisal is a measurement of the property values. And you're saying the property values are going up, but the appraisals aren't.
The appraisals do go up, but every time someone buys a piece of property for more than it was appraised at, the next appraisal goes up. So yeah, the next time we appraise that property, it'll go up because somebody paid $800,000 for it. But by that time, we've already done our appraisal. We already can't offer that same amount, and we've already lost. It's really difficult for us to compete with a well-funded private individual that wants to buy property. It just is. And I've talked to Kenny. By the way, I don't want to disparage Kenny Sang. He's doing a great job with that piece of property. He's making it look a lot better than it ever has on this part right here, which is currently the entryway to the airport. He's doing a good job with it. And he wants to work with us on trying to square off the pieces so that everybody has contiguous land. Good guy, but more money than we have and doesn't have to follow the same rules that we do, and that's tough to compete with.
Real estate rules, appraisals are based on sales and not on listings.
Right.
And so that's where we get into trouble. Because they just look at every sale and that's what they have to base their appraisal on.
So the next piece of property that goes up, because of that sale, the next one that goes up for sale is going to be a lot more valuable. But we still can only go 10% above whatever it appraises at. And then if somebody comes in and goes 100% above what it appraises at, it's pretty tough to compete with that. Does that clear it up at all? Okay.
That's right.
It just seems that the law doesn't make sense in these situations where there's I think I understand probably the reason behind it, but at the same time, it seems to be a negative unintended consequence.
And aren't we finding that with a lot of laws that we have? There are many unintended consequences to all of the decisions that we make. They were put in there for a reason, to prevent graft and to prevent people from doing the wrong thing. But in the end, it does tie our hands. It ties our hands. Yeah.
Steve, and is this accurate to say that that 10% overage only if you're using FAA funding.
I think that's any government funding. I think that's a city policy as well. Because I had Tara Riddle handle the negotiation for this, and the rule is 10%. Wayne can.
Yeah, that is the general rule. Part of the appraisals typically lag simply because they use past sales, and they might go back 2 or 3 years. And getting an average of those numbers, you will always lag behind the market. We find that in almost any property acquisition we do, the appraisal is well below what people believe the property's worth. Now, the one thing I will mention is redevelopment agencies are not constrained by the same code limitation. And so if you're purchasing it, if it's being purchased by a redevelopment agency, you can pay more than appraised value. But, yeah.
So maybe that's our thing. Maybe we just do everything through the redevelopment agency from here on in.
Also.
So anyway, that makes the property, but I also would say that everything right now that is being used in this airport protection zone is being used in a very airport compatible way. Farms, despite what some people have said about us wanting to go and get farms are very compatible with airports. We love farms. That's a great thing to have surrounding your airport. So no one's trying to go out and destroy anybody's farm. In fact, we haven't gone out and asked anyone to sell. If people we purchased from have come to us. So anyway, a lot of that's privately owned, but if you look long term, you can kind of get an idea that everything west of 3110 really makes sense at some point in the distant future to be part of the airport. Is that now? Is that 50 years from now? Who knows? It depends on how quickly we grow and how quickly the owners of those properties determine that the property is more valuable than what they're currently using it for and sell it. All right, I've done something again.
Steve, can you point out where the West Side Connector comes in? How that impacts your
So
plan?
currently the West Side Connector comes right through here, like this. And the way that affects the master plan is it gives us a great opportunity to capture any passengers coming from the south of the airport. It gives a lot better connectivity to the airport, particularly the terminal. It goes right to the terminal, the area that we've master planned for the terminal. So in our original master plan, one of the negatives of the airport to commercial service was that our accessibility was bad. That will solve that problem. Accessibility will get much better. Yeah.
One of my favorite things to do when flying out of Salt Lake is to jump on Front Runner, switch to tracks, fly out. Don't have to worry about parking. Don't have to worry about any of that stuff. Wonderful. Love it. When speaking about accessibility, do we have plans to give people the option to jump on Front Runner and then move from Front Runner to our airport?
That would be in the future if, as our passenger loads start to grow. We just recently started bus service down there, and you'll see that when the plane lands, there will be 3 or 4 people taking the bus. Otherwise, the bus circle's empty most of the time. So as more people start to use that bus, it'll make more and more sense to start looking at bringing a line down. Yeah.
Steve, if I can add to that, the council knows that the West Side Connector is standing to the board for the forum, and in the conversation with MAG, who oversees projects, funding for projects like that, and with Warren City, the city, Provo City, has raised the question of having extra right-of-way for future, whether it's mass transit or BRT or some kind of mass transit, because that road will eventually kind of go and connect into the Warren Transit Center, and so it makes sense to get some corridor preservation happening right now.
When we're talking master plan, we're talking future.
Right.
It seems to me, so it sounds like we have a bus route, but if the plane's not landing, it's pretty much empty because no one uses it. But when it lands, when there is a plane there, a few people will take it. I don't know how effective, efficient that is. And rather than having our people maybe move more, I mean, there may be some sense, some advantage for Provo, even if it's a shuttle service that moves people between the airport and downtown or the airport and the front runner station that could be scheduled to take people as soon as it lands. There's a shuttle that's going to move you out there, and an hour and a half before something leaves, the shuttle circles around downtown, the front runner station, and out. And I'm not saying next week or
Right.
a year, but as we're looking for a master plan, it might make sense to be looking at ground transportation.
And I agree, it's a good idea, and some of the taxi cab services have picked up on that. The private industry seems to be able to do that better than we do. I don't want to get into an argument about UTA, but they do have to schedule their people at certain times, and our current airline doesn't seem to be as concerned about, I shouldn't say that either.
Routine.
They try their best to be on time. Today they were supposed to be in at 1:30, but they're coming in at 5:30. So, just to let you know. So, yeah.
I was going to mention, we've got employees today with our current size that are riding trains, and then they come down front runner from Salt Lake or points north, bring the bus out, and we've got customers that'll drop an airplane off, and they take the bus, and front runner tracks back down.
Great.
So,
The bus is using UVU, I think, has some students that use it. It's picking up. I mean, the first, like what's 4 or 5 months? The first 4 or 5 months, I would just see it circling empty. But now there are more and more people starting to use it as they know that it's there. So it's picking up.
Thank you.
Okay, so airport protection zone in gray. Airport protection zone includes everything outside here. We didn't actually draw that notch into the airport protection zone. I can't remember our logic for that, but we just didn't. One interesting thing that happened is I wish we'd made the airport protection zone just a little bit bigger than we did. We got as much as we could based on the community. But right now, just on the other side of Center Street, right over here, there is a convalescent care center that is completed. It's a beautiful place, and anytime we have to take off runway 18, they won't have any trouble waking people up. They'll be out. So something to think about. So we see that area as that road gets built as being a great spot for light industrial commercial. Because I started in economic development, I can't help thinking that way a little bit, and what we learn in economic development is we generate all of our money off of freeway exits. Freeway exits is where you pull money from other cities. Your downtown is where you pull money from your own city. Provo doesn't have a lot of freeway exits. In fact, we only really have one good, viable freeway exit. Center Street's kind of built out. It's tough to turn that into a great commercial corridor. You look at Orem, they've got 3 tremendous commercial corridors. I've always looked at the Provo Airport, and the reason that I took the job as airport manager is because I looked at the Provo Airport as a freeway exit. As a freeway exit that we are the only ones in the county that have. No one can compete with us on our freeway exit. And as this airport continues to grow and we build this terminal, this road comes in, we've created a commercial corridor here that is unmatched. It's an ability for us to view that as a freeway exit, a way of generating revenue from citizens of other cities. That's all pluses to the airport, to the city, which is another reason that I think commercial service at the airport is important. It's important that we support it, and it's important that we continue to grow it. It doesn't just help the airport, it doesn't just help convenience, it gives us a commercial corridor that we would not otherwise have. Okay? Terminal usage, I think most of you have seen these pictures. This is our terminal on a fairly average flight. This was actually on a Sunday, which is one of our lower days. We have a capacity of 170. That's how many seats we have in the terminal. I asked everybody not to look at the camera, but they still did. The average use is 140. You can't see that very well, but we usually have 140 people in the terminal on any given day. Same flight. We average 9 flights a week. Coming September, we're going to be around 14 flights a week.
Currently it's 12.
Yeah, we did go up since this was put in. We've got 12 now, 14 in September. This is our baggage claim area, the pride of the Provo Airport. And last year we did 65,000 passengers. This year with 14 flights per week, we're looking closer to 100,000 is how many passengers will move through the Provo Airport, making us easily the second busiest airport in the state.
Steve, when you say 14 flights, that is takeoff and landing?
No, that's just operations. It'd be 28 total operations. So the economic impact of that, direct labor, the airport employs about 100 people right now. What makes us, at one point, it made us like the 5th largest employer in the city. Payroll about 11,800,000. The economic output with multiplier effect, 28,500. And those are old numbers. They've gone way up since then. This was from our master plan, so this is 10 years ago, at minimum of 10 years ago. We're looking at about $110,000 in parking. Passenger facility charges $42,000. Landing fees about $33,000. This is all based on 9 flights. Indirect impacts: hotel stays, convention use, restaurant and shopping, new freeway exit, and a new commercial corridor. The master plan in 2001 estimated that if we could get to a point where we had 6 daily flights, the total economic impact of the city would be about $90 million annually. That includes multiplier effects, but that does not include the creation of that commercial corridor, which would create additional sales tax revenue. None of that was factored in. This is just from having 6 daily flights from our airport, and right now we're at 2. Yeah.
So when you talk about a commercial corridor, and you're right, we really don't have a lot or very good options with our exits. So you're focusing on using one of our exits and a commercial corridor that we're building. But what do you envision happening between like the airport and the freeway? I mean, maybe that's a thing for economic development to talk about, but there's opportunity there. But right now it's just kind of undeveloped farmland.
Undeveloped farmland. First of all, just convenience stuff that is adjacent to airports all the time. You have hotels, restaurants that always crop up around major commercial airports. So that's one. You also have places for convenient shopping, but it's also a place where you could have actual shopping centers because the West Side continues to develop housing. It's one of the few places we've got left for housing. So you're going to have traffic going up and down this corridor that just becomes an ideal place for any kind of commercial development, including retail development. Now retail, the face of retail has changed dramatically because of the internet. Retail is declining. I don't think anybody can say it isn't, but convenience retail is not declining, and that's the kind of retail you would have here. Does that make sense?
Hey, Steve.
Yes.
Generated by 6 daily flights. What was the 6 daily flights based on as far as passenger?
737, so about the size of the 319 that we're flying now. Yeah. It was not based on the RJs. They pulled the RJ model out and focused specifically on large jets. So it also doesn't include what we might get if we had 50-seat RJs going in and out as well. Yeah.
What's the kind of time frame when we talk about 6 daily flights? Now, obviously, that's up to others, but I mean, is that our goal for 5 years, 10 years, 25 years?
The master plan had us there now. A couple of things happened. 9/11 happened, and that set the airline industry back dramatically. The airline industry picked up, started rolling again, and then 2008 happened. So some of the things that we can't predict, and let's face it, master plans, you're throwing grass in the air. Frankly, our master plan has been closer than I could ever imagine. We've accomplished a significant portion of this master plan. There's a reason they like you to update them. They're made for 20 years, but they like you to update them every 15 years or as need arises, because they're very rarely right. Okay, the commercial conditions change dramatically. For example, if you read our master plan, you will see a ton of airlines they want us to go after that don't even exist anymore. All right. So those are some of the things that we just have to deal with. Just economic downturns, economic surges. We just had a couple of pretty significant downturns between 2001 and 2016 that have probably slowed the growth. So when do I see this happening? When the economy fully recovers, the airline industry has enough pilots. Another thing that we've found out from airlines is that despite UVU cranking pilots out right and left, there's still a shortage of pilots. They have hardware sitting on the ground they can't fly because they don't have anybody flying.
We're constrained somewhat too by the configuration of the current terminal.
Oh, yeah.
And even if the market rebounded, we simply can't accommodate for the current terminal.
And that's on my final slide. Let's get to that as quickly as we can. This is just stuff for you to know. This is what we consider our catchment area. Catchment area is people we would hope to be able to get to fly out of Provo. About a 700,000 population. Our share of what the market would be. These are numbers that I share with airlines so that they know we have a good market. You can see our growth is 46.1%. I always emphasize when I meet with airlines that in terms of job growth and population growth, it's either us or Vegas every year, number one, number two. These are our top markets. We've already got someone going into Los Angeles. We've added San Diego. We've got San Francisco. It's actually Oakland. We've got, we're covering some of those with Allegiant, but we're not capturing any of the business market or any of the LDS, any of the church travel, the official church travel. They won't fly Allegiant, and business travelers won't fly either. So what we're getting right now with all those passengers flying out of Provo is 100% leisure travel. So we have a huge untapped market. Yeah.
Just had a couple of anecdotal comments this week that made me think that there were a couple of flights that were delayed several hours because they had to wait for a mechanic to come from Salt Lake down to fix the issue. And I'm wondering, isn't there a way to have mechanics here or with Duncan Aviation? I don't know if they're just solely private, but isn't there a way to have somebody here so you're not waiting for someone to travel all the way from Salt Lake?
I'll keep Chris out of this for just a second, and then I'll let him go ahead and comment on that. Yeah, there is. Duncan is right next door and could sign a contract with Allegiant. However, Allegiant's current contract is with TAC Air. I'm not sure Duncan would even want to accept that responsibility unless one of their employees wanted to sign an individual separate contract where they would be working as a contractor with TAC Air under their insurance so that we could cut that time down. The problem is you have to have a commercially certified mechanic on site. We don't get enough of those types of issues for TAC Air to pay a full-time commercial guy to sit there and eat a sandwich and watch TV in the event that a light doesn't come on or they hit a bird when they land. So there is about an hour that it takes when something happens for that to come in. We do have mechanics there that are qualified. What that would require would be that they sign some sort of use agreement with TAC Air, take off their Duncan shirt, put on an Allegiant shirt, go over as someone else and back in, and we've actually had these discussions, and we're always looking for ways to cut that time down. Despite what people think, it really doesn't happen that often. We've had a couple recently, but it just doesn't happen that often. Allegiant being late just on their own by a half an hour, 45 minutes, an hour, is not terribly unusual. But delays because of mechanical on the ground at Provo don't happen all that regularly. Usually the mechanical happens somewhere. Is that fair if I covered that for you guys?
Yeah, I'll just comment with that. When the agreement was made, it's actually made with Keystone Aviation, so I don't want to convolute the whole Keystone Aviation TAC Air Duncan thing. But at the time, we only had 2 flights a week. We made that arrangement. So the time, there wasn't justification to staff a full-time mechanic in Provo for 2 flights a week. Now, as it increases, the frequency increases, you know, obviously we'll have more and more. On par with other airlines, it'd be interesting to see, but I'd be willing to gander that there's not any more mechanical, well, if there is, it's very small difference, but there's not any more mechanical issues with the Legion than there is with any other airline. What magnifies the problem in Provo is there's no options. The facilities are really what's a issue. People can handle delay, but there's nowhere to eat. There's not a lot of room for, if we have 2 flights at a time, we don't have facility to accommodate those people. So it just becomes magnified.
We don't have other aircraft just sitting around that they can shuttle in. If we have to bring a rescue aircraft, it's got to fly in from Las Vegas or from Mesa, and that's another hour-and-a-half delay while we're waiting for a new aircraft to come up. Whereas if you're at a hub and you're flying Delta, well, Delta's got planes everywhere. They can just scoot another one in and away they go. Same thing if our pilots time out. They've got to fly new pilots in to take that airplane out. So when you're on a smaller operation, it magnifies some of those issues. Yeah.
And from the Duncan perspective, it's just purely liability. We're such a litigious society. We're just not willing to risk 2,400 jobs because we changed our light bulb in a bathroom.
So Tech Air shoulders all of that insurance liability. Okay, immediate issues. We have flights 7 days a week now, which means that a couple of things. Number one, we have to have at least 1 firefighter there. Right now, the way we're staffing it is with 4. We require on Sundays. We're going to have 3 flights a day coming up in September, which is basically a full day. That's taking a fireman and a police officer down for a full day. It also requires 1 airport security coordinator. That's one of my guys. We have to be there 7 days a week. So right now the way we're handling that is we're just rotating through. One of us takes a weekend one time, one of us takes, and then if anybody's gone overtime, I take the flight. So I take all the evening flights. That's been my. It also is a greater badging demand. We have 1 person, Susan Nelson, who's right now pretty much over all of our badging. As we add employees to Duncan, as we add more TSA requirements, our badging becomes more and more difficult. So 7-day-a-week operation has become a vastly different operation than the way the airport was when I started there 16 years ago. Additional destinations are unlikely with the current terminal. Allegiant has just come right out and told me that when they add San Diego, that's about as far as they can go with what we have. We cannot overlap flights. Right now they've got flights scheduled an hour-and-a-half apart. The websites all tell people to show up at the airport 2 hours early. If they show up at our airport 2 hours early, we can't let them in. And if they show up 20 minutes early, we can't let them in. So they have a window that they have to be at the airport. We have to keep those flights separate because we only have 1 gate. So those flights closer together is helpful and it's bad. It helps us with staffing because we don't have to send TSA home and the police officer back to the beat and then call them back down. They can just stay. But it's also difficult if they overlap. We don't have anywhere to put them. Couple of other things that are current. If we build a new terminal, if we find a way to build a new terminal, and we're looking at different options for that, it opens up some new revenue sources for the airport that we currently don't get. We could get concessionaires revenue that we're currently not getting. We can charge a different type of PFC or passenger charge than we're currently charging. Part of the problem with the terminal we have right now is it's sort of shared. The first part of it belongs to TAC Air. The second part of it belongs to Provo City. So we've got negotiations with 3 different parties. to try and determine who pays what and when. That makes it difficult for airlines to commit to us a certain number because they have to commit to TAC a certain number. And I'm not beating up on TAC here. We've got a great partnership between Provo and TAC. They've kept their prices very low, but low as they are, they're still a price, and it's a price that we have to lower our price as well to make sure that the two together keep it somewhere where Allegiant will stay and keep flying. Because Allegiant is an airline with a reputation for just popping up and going somewhere else if it's not working out. And then the other big thing we've got is the demand for new box hangars. I mentioned last time we all got together that the Provo Airport is still a general aviation airport. We have a lot of GA, but we are transitioning into more of the corporate and jet portion of that market, and the GA is transitioning more to Spanish Fork. It's just sort of naturally evolving in that direction. So we need our master plan redone. We need to open up areas for development, which means we're going to have to invest in some taxi lane construction, because at this particular point at the airport, we're out of pavement to build on. You can't build a hangar without a taxi lane, and we're working through some of those issues. So those are the issues that we're dealing with and that the airport board is familiar with. We really need a new corporate taxi lane. We have demand right now. I have 5 or 6 people that would like to build corporate hangars. We don't have anywhere to put them. And then we need the ramp expansion on the north taxiway, and that's the Duncan area. So we're working that out through some other channels as well. Just so everybody knows, snow removal lives in the winter. Adding that ramp expansion will add about 2 hours of snow removal time. Right now it takes us about 10 hours to clear the airport. If everything goes well and it stops snowing exactly when we want it to, we can clear the entire airport of snow in about 10 hours with all 3 of us plowing. That'll add 2 hours, so we'll be about 12 hours to clear the entire airport. And that's assuming it doesn't snow again. A few years ago we had it snow 3 days in a row, and I know the streets department was going crazy. We lived down there. We would cycle through and take naps and just keep plowing because it just kept going. Yeah.
How much snow can you have on the runway still?
It's all about friction. We can have 0 snow on the runway. If we have to go out and do a friction test every 20 to 30 minutes, if the friction test is above a 40, and I don't expect you to know what that means, but if it comes in at above a 40, we're good. Doesn't matter how much snow's on there, we've got a 40. The friction is good, they can land. You won't get a 40 if there's snow there, though. You have to just go clear it.
You might mention or expand on the fact that if you don't get on top of it, it can turn into ice and you can never get it off.
Yeah, and once it turns into ice and the temperatures stay below 0 for those few days a year that happens, it's just ice, and then we have to sand or do whatever we have to do to try and get the friction up. Yeah. That's it. Sorry, that took a lot longer than I had hoped that it would, but hopefully now we can talk about those things and maybe let the airport board chime in.
I think that was excellent. We appreciate you being prepared with that. Are there other questions of council members that have not been asked? I did have one question about the master plan.
Yeah.
Who is involved in the planning of the master plan? What is your stakeholder?
Oh yeah, you weren't here for this last one.
Yeah.
This was the worst experience of my life. I think this one will be better. We had 30 some odd public hearings over this master plan. We bring in a consultant. They go around, they talk to people on the airport, they talk to people in the city, they'll come talk to you. Then we have stakeholder meetings where we publicly notice and let everybody come and give their input and what they feel the airport should or shouldn't be, and we try and talk through that. It ends up being a big process, and it takes a long time, but we give ample opportunity for everyone to voice their opinion. on what it is. And surprisingly, the hardest thing about this master plan was people understanding what a master plan is. This is not what we're going to do. We're making a plan, and we're going to go out, and we're going to force this down somebody's throat. We had to get them to understand this is what we think is coming, whether we want it to or not. So we can either plan for it, or we can just wing it. And obviously, we'd rather have a plan for it. And a lot of the things that the plan saw coming have come. Some of them didn't. So we didn't implement those portions, but we've implemented the portions that did. And we have a plan going forward. So the biggest thing was getting people to understand what a master plan really meant. That it wasn't necessarily a sales pitch. It was giving us a way to handle what we think is happening.
It seems like so much of it is technical for the average person to be able to weigh in on some of those things. It just seems like these are things that have to happen for the airport to run, and a lot of that's technical. So what kinds of input did you look for from citizens? Just
well, we tried to explain, what the plan was, first of all, but then we also wanted to know what their concerns were, and we found that most of their concerns centered around they didn't want us condemning property. They were worried about traffic, vehicle traffic, so we did a full vehicle traffic study showing that one neighborhood built on the west side produces so much more traffic than the airport ever will, even at its greatest build-out, that our traffic was really quite negligible in the long run. We were able to show them that. And then they were worried about noise because they had in mind a Salt Lake International type airport. And we had to try and get everyone to understand, like right now, we're adding 28 operations a week to the airport, an airport that does 100,000 operations, 100,000 operations a year. We're going to add 28 a week. You're unlikely to even notice them. And they fly a different pattern. They fly straight in. These aircraft don't circle over neighborhoods. They don't go over people. So it's interesting to note that since we started commercial service, I haven't had a single complaint about noise because of our commercial jets. None. If I get a complaint about noise, it's about a helicopter. So it's trying to get them to understand the scale, that it's something they probably won't notice. And to do that, I went around and I bought a decibel meter and went around to different areas in the city to find out what the decibels were. At almost every housing location that I could go to, trains are by far the loudest thing. Cars and trucks passing in front of their house, far louder than any aircraft we ever have flying around. Just to try and demonstrate to people that those fears aren't necessarily valid. I can see why they'd be worried about it. I live right next to the BYU football stadium. And when we talk loud, I've had my decibel meter out there too, just to find out what it is. I mean, hearing damage in my living room some games if it gets really exciting. But luckily, it hasn't gotten very exciting for a while. I'm not a hater. I can't wait. This year I have a feeling it's going to be quiet, but I think it'll get louder as the years go by. So
it'll be loud.
Okay.
You'll have to figure your flex in.
I look forward to that. So the noise is an issue, the traffic is an issue that they worry about, and it's just a matter of educating that it's really not what you think it's going to be. They're only used to Salt Lake. They've never seen Bozeman, Montana. They've never seen Grand Junction, Colorado, or some of these other airports that are smaller. Most people don't have experience with that. And it's a totally different situation. You were going to say something.
I was going to say I was in Lincoln, Nebraska last year for the BYU game. It's very quiet.
I'm hoping for a loud year. I'll keep my decibel meter there. If it goes over 100 decibels, I know we'll win. Any other questions? Okay, then let me just say really quickly about our airport board. We started off meeting monthly. When I first got there, I wanted to change it to monthly. Before that, it had been quarterly. We went to the monthly meetings, and we found we really just didn't have a lot to talk about. we were rehashing a lot of the same old stuff. So we've gone back to a quarterly meeting. And our airport board is great at sort of hearing what we're saying, what we're proposing, and understanding what there is. We've got a great mix of citizens to pilots to corporate entities. Everybody brings a little different perspective. Our flight school's there, our FBO is there. Lonnie represents the general aviation pilots that are there, Bill, the business entity. Carol Walker and Mark Hathaway represent, citizens of Provo. We've got a good mix of people that come from a lot of different backgrounds, and they offer great advice. During this master plan process, it was the airport board that convinced us we needed to change to a right-hand pattern, which would take noise away from the city. I don't expect you to know what a right-hand pattern was, but just trust me, it's something pilots did not want. But we went to a right-hand pattern to try and negate some of those noise issues. They were instrumental in getting the control tower, which was another battle that we had to fight, and the radar installation. So all of those things are because we've had the support of our airport board.
Steve, as you talk about the control tower, how secure are we in that now? I know that we were on the reel on a bubble there.
We have a contract tower, which means we're not an FAA-owned air traffic control tower. That means that a company called Serco actually manages the people inside the tower. We own the physical facility, not the FAA. So we're in this unique situation where we require funding from the FAA to support Serco. And every year it seems like they start talking about closing down contract towers. And every year we go back to Washington, lobby to keep those towers open. That seems to have ebbed a little bit because I think Congress has finally realized that the contract tower is a significantly more cost-effective way to air traffic control than the FAA towers are, for a lot of different reasons. But the more passengers we add to the airport, the further we get from that bubble area. We get safer and safer keeping that tower open. So as of this year, we're good. When they start doing another round of budgets, that's when we start to spot again. But this year we're doing okay.
So that left-hand pattern, actually the right-hand pattern puts you out over the lake and the left-hand over the residents.
There you go. What we actually have is a left-hand pattern when you're coming one direction and a right-hand pattern when you're going the other direction so that you always are over the lake. And that was the pilot's concern. And a valid concern. But with the control tower, it makes that a lot more safe to do. Because when we switch directions, because the runway, you always go into the wind. So when the wind shifts, which it always does, what do you think, Mario? Chris, what about 2 o'clock in the afternoon when we suddenly go from landing 1-3 to landing 3-1? When we make that switch, that's when it gets a little tricky because you got people coming one direction, you got to turn them all around.
Plus corporate aircraft, if they come in, they'll always come in on the primary runway and then circle to land. So you have to take that in consideration. But the big issue back in the day was really the approach. When you're flying a left or right-hand pattern around an airport, that's one thing. It's almost manageable, to be honest with you. It's how you enter the pattern. We do that on what we call a 45-degree entry. And typically, and the reason to do that is to deconflict with people that are already established in the pattern where it's hard to see wing up, you can imagine. Your visibility is skewed a bit. And they would come in essentially from the Provo golf course and East Bay, and they were basically transecting much of the city, and that was obviously causing a lot of the low-flying type of noise that they did.
And as the pattern gets more and more busy, they keep extending their downwinds, and before you know it, we're turning base over the Orem Mall, and
Right.
I mean, it just kept getting longer and longer. And the towers got a lot of that under control, and UVU has set a policy of how many people will be in the pattern before they'll enter it. So we've done a lot of things to try and negate the noise issue. And I'm proud to say we very rarely get a noise complaint anymore. And if we do, it's because we just closed our primary runway to resurface it, and we're taking off on 1-8. And when we take off 1-8, yeah, there's going to be noise headed toward the city. But when we stay on the primary, it's just not been an issue.
Steve, tell us a little bit about the partnership with UVU and how that's working, and what do you see for that going forward? I hear it's a great flight school. Do you see that expanding?
Well, we have somebody from UVU here that can probably comment on that better than I can. I think we have a great partnership. When we've needed to use their building, they're always available for us, and vice versa. We try and make it work. So.
Yeah, we recognize certainly that there's that symbiotic relationship, if you will, for so many reasons. The traffic counts needed from the appropriations side to be able to get the dollars that it's going to take to keep up the facilities, to be able to have that commercial service, which actually doesn't add a lot in way of operations, but those employments that Steve spoke about are obviously very important. For us, I can tell you that we are approaching our 29th year of operation out of the Provo Airport. We've operated our own fleet since 1994. Before that, we contract out. And we have one of the larger fleets in collegiate aviation in the nation. Right now, we're flying about 200 flight students at any given time. And we account for around 70% of the operations that occur at the Provo Airport. It's a number that used to be probably the same percentage, but we used to have a lot more productivity, meaning that we're actually down 45% from our peak at 26,000 flight hours just at the Provo Airport. And each flight hour will have between 3 and 4 operations each. So you can do the math. It's very, very substantial. We are down to 13 to 14,000 flight hours right now, but we're starting to see that incline again in the industry of about 10 and 2 years ago, 20 per year increase. And so that means that the market again is needing pilots. It's getting to be an exciting time for students to come back into the industry. And of course, we're a collegiate trainer. Our business is not to produce pilots, it's to produce pilots with degrees, meaning that it's a collegiate endeavor. And of course, one way we do that is we front load a lot of the flight training so they can continue to be a student. But we have 2- and 4-year programs, and we're RATP certified with the new restricted ATP restrictions that you might have heard about, where no pilot can actually fly after the Colligan accident in a commercial carrier with less than 1,000 hours of experience, for example, if they're with an organization like ours. Otherwise, if they were to go within the regular fixed base operator route, they'd have to have 1,500 hours. And so we have those highest accolades that a collegiate university can have, to include 141 training. We offer all the GI Bill training, things of that nature. So there's a lot of reason, and we even have some international prospects. There's a lot of reasons for that flying to continue to evolve at the airport. We rely heavily on that relationship with Provo City. Right now we have 2 structures that are dedicated for flight, which were on the map there, and I'm not sure if you pointed those out, but they're in that corporate area, west facing, and our close to 40,000 square feet we utilize for the maintenance of those aircraft that we operate, classroom facilities and offices. And we hope to expand. We have some reason to believe that we'll have some fruitful years, and we'll potentially be expanding into potentially A&P flight, or mechanic training is a possibility, some dispatch and some other training possibilities as well. Right now we also do provide training for the Federal Aviation Administration. We actually develop some of their course loads through some of our online initiatives. So we have some pretty exciting times ahead of us as well.
When I started at the airport, I had a saying that I didn't say out loud very often, and that was that UVU was 90% of my headache and about 3% of my revenue. I came over the years to realize that UVU is a vital part of our airport, and in terms of operations, but not just in terms of operations. That was my first realization, is that those operations put us in another class. But also in the way they do everything first class. They keep everything clean, they keep everything nice. It's a well-run organization. And I also realized that when I have a problem with UVU, it is very easy to correct. You call Mario and the problem is solved. Whereas with general aviation pilots, you're not a problem, Lonnie, but you know how general aviation pilots are. It becomes a little more complicated when we have trouble with them. So Yeah, they've been a great partner. TAC Air's a great partner. Duncan's a great partner. And we've tried to partner with every business that goes in there. We give something, we get something. It just, we all have to work together.
Any other questions or comments? No, I just, on a personal note, want to tell you how much I appreciate the airport. We fly out, my family, me or my family members fly out quite often from Provo, and it's such, I'll call it a blessing to be able to just, drive 15 minutes and hop on with little effort, really. I mean, it's just a well-run operation. You don't have a lot of the frustrations of travel that you normally have when you fly. I mean, it's just a really well-run operation. I appreciate it.
Chris does a great job with his guys, and I think we may also be the only airport that I know of in the country where I've actually received phone calls complimenting us on our TSA. And I know how friendly and nice our TSA agents are.
True.
So
Yeah.
yeah, we're kind of firing on all cylinders right now.
Yeah.
It's going on.
Well, thank you. Yeah, we appreciate the board. We appreciate you all being here and having this discussion with us. It's nice to get to know you a little bit better. And so we appreciate everyone that was able to come today. We have a few minutes to just visit, and then our meeting, our work meeting will start in about 15 minutes. So we'll have to clear the room at that point. But well, we don't have to clear. You can stay if you want to enjoy our work session too. But if not, we'll rearrange a little bit.
I think our airport board chair, Mark Hadley, might want to say a couple of words. Maybe we can just go around with the airport board, kind of talk about their experience on the airport board. Would that be okay?
Sure, that would be fantastic. Yeah.
I don't I always think I need to do more and to help Chris more in terms of not Chris, Steve, so that we can support them. And we think they do a great job. We do, and we look forward to being of any kind of assistance to them and to the board. Having spent 12 years on the council, I kind of have a feeling for what you guys are going through too, and we hope that we can add to that better relationship, better service for our community, and that's our goal, is to do more and do better. And we are pleased to work with Steve and all these gentlemen who make it a good board. Thank you very much, each of you.
Can I ask a quick question? So, if as you go around, if you could just put a sentence on how you're involved with the board. It sounds like you're the chair and a former city council member. But if everyone could just say kind of what your relationship is, as well as, is there anything that you see that the council can do to better support the airport?
Well, I think you do. I think you support us and vice versa. And I think that's what it's about. We have to work together. We want to work together. And it's all for the benefit of our citizens. Her example of going to the airport for 15 minutes and being able to jump on an airplane is very, very prevalent with everyone that I know about. It makes a much more pleasant experience than going to Salt Lake or any other major airport. I think that's what it's about. Thank you.
Yeah, my name is Mario Marquitas. Obviously, have the floor there for a moment. I hail from another nation, actually. I came as an international student to this great nation many years ago and fell in love with its people and its country, and I've worked with the university for a long time, and I'm proud to be a citizen now for a few years, 3 years. But I've been with Utah Valley University. It'll be my 20th year this December, and I've been running the flight school as its director of operations for many of those years. Seen a lot of growth. It's been a great potential for us, and really excited to be part of something that's not only up and coming, but actually able to drive innovation when it comes to our industry, which actually has been stagnant for many years. We actually offer some of the most amazing training aircraft experiences you have with the composite nature and some of the avionics packages that we actually start seeing in general aviation, which before that point only really existed in the corporate and commercial world. And we're able to see some of those benefits of being able to drive new fuel technologies, safety measures. I mean, even parachutes and aircraft and airbags and things of that nature. I think it's getting to be a pretty interesting field. Not to mention, we live in the greatest country of air travel. Looking at that map, being reminded that there's an airport literally in every city is pretty amazing. And you know, it's a use it or lose it type of philosophy. You know, we all can be aviators, and of course, it's an industry and the market. Great pleasure for us, and I'll leave it with the last part of the comment as to what you could do for us, what we can do for each other. Really, we see us being able to continue to innovate, even as a university, being able to cater to our local citizens that are in the area. I can also tell you that we have, as you know, one of the reasons that people move here with their business and everything else is because of the workforce, because of the culture that exists, all the same things that brought me to this great state. And of course, at the airport and its services are actually a requisite to be able to make that viable for many of these corporations and these individuals. So the corporate taxi lane, to be able to continue to see the growth in a professional and thought out manner, I think is a very exciting time, one that we really stand behind, and it's a pleasure to be part of that. Chris?
I wonder where Mario's Swedish accent is.
Yeah, I'm half Greek, so that's why we're
Is that why it works together? I don't get it, okay.
If you hear him speak Swedish, there's no accent there either. If you hear him speak Greek, there's no accent when he speaks Greek.
It's my highlight.
I understand.
Chris Whitehead, I don't know how much in depth you need to know, but I'm with General Manager for TAC Air, formerly a millionaire. Many of you may have known Larry Mendenhall, he's my predecessor. But anyways, I've been in a fixed base operator, FPO, side of this business in the aviation industry for quite a few years, 16 years. Worked in FBOs in North Dakota and Dallas, or excuse me, Houston, Texas, and also in Salt Lake City. But you know, it's been really a privilege to work with Provo City. I've been working here at Provo Airport for 7 years now. Really enjoy being here, working with Steve, with the board. You know, it's really been a pleasure, and you know, TAC Air and our relationship with the city, you know, it's a hopefully an ongoing relationship that we can continue to foster and grow. As far as what you guys can do for us, you know, the biggest thing, kind of echoing what Mario said, is realizing the potential that Provo City has. As far as aviation is concerned, and the potential you have at the airport to grow this and make this something really special. You know, we're talking about 15, 20 years down the road. And to me, it almost seems like Steve kind of downplays it, but really, really huge potential you guys have. And hopefully we can help with that in any way we can.
It's not downplaying, it's managing expectations.
Long-worded, you like to have it, general aviation. I have been a hangar owner and aircraft operator out the airport since 1976. It's something going on at the airport, so it's a vital part of it. I've watched the airport develop from almost a grass strip, I mean, that's to what it is now. And it's just amazing to me with the depth and the efforts that Steve has put into the airport. I probably shouldn't say this, but when he first came on board, we called him Colonel. But we soon learned that, you know, Steve knew what was going on. Just developed the airport into what we see. There's a viewpoint, you know, it makes it so much better and so much nicer to have an airport that we can actually build, well, our interests and participate in aviation. And so, you know, just from my viewpoint, I'm a long-time board member. I think this is about my 5th term on the board, so you've seen me a lot. So I really appreciate you talking to me.
And Bill Prohaska with Duck Aviation. I've been in the industry since '79, actually, and started out in flight test out in Wichita with Learjet and Cessna, and I've been with the company now for the last 29 years. Actually, Thursday will be my 29th anniversary, so this week. So our president reminded me last week that I'm still on probation. Until we get to 30, there's no guarantee, so got a year to go. But I appreciate just the 6 years I've been out here. The city's been wonderful to work with. The state, the county, everybody out here has just been fantastic to work with. And if I had anything, I would suggest to the council, and I think I've mentioned this before, maintain that buffer zone, that perimeter around the airport. Warehouses, farms, and cemeteries make great neighbors for airports. High-density housing does not. I ran our Battle Creek, Michigan facility for 12 years before I moved to Provo, and we had high-end residential homes about 200 yards from the end of one of the runways. And airport's been there for 30 years, homes have been there for 6 months, and when the phone goes off at 3 in the morning. So.
Bill, and this may come in one of our presentations, how did the presentations to the state go? We had to make some decisions 2 weeks ago,
right?
So that you could go forward with those presentations. How did they go?
Unanimous vote for the state. Everything's in place up there, so I'm very positive. Last Thursday was that meeting. We'll go ahead. Governor's office was represented. Several city officials were there. And very positive.
Well, thank you again. Welcome the mayor.
Thank you.
As we
Excuse
close.
me. Yeah.
Would you like to say anything else or just?
So happy to be here.
Appreciate you. Okay, well, thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
Well, do we do a motion to adjourn? Not for the lunch, right? I'm sorry, I don't think we need a motion to adjourn for the business part as a lunch. So, all right, thank you.
Thanks so much.